In Mesopotamia, she's called Ishtar. When she went into the Greek land, she was called Aphrodite, and then Venus. So what this means is once the door is open, she is the goddess of sexuality, of sexual immorality. She's the goddess, she's actually called a prostitute. So if she returns, what would happen? If she comes out, it means that America is going to undergo a sexual revolution. That is the sign of the possession of Ishtar, or this goddess. She actually damages marriage. She actually weakens marriage. That's what happens. In ancient times in Israel, in the Middle East, she put her images of naked people all over the culture. And so not only she was in her Greek form, she gave birth to a child named Eros. We get the word erotica. So erotica starts flooding America. The word for prostitute, which is what she was, in her Greek incarnation is the word porne. We get the word porn from it. So there's an explosion of pornography all over the culture, because something strange about the goddess, and that has to do with gender. Because what she also did is, in her ancient inscriptions, I'm looking at these ancient inscriptions, she says, I am a woman, I am a man. It says, it's said in her hymns, it says she has the power to transform a man into a woman and a woman into a man. You're going to start seeing what she's going to do is she's going to start masculinizing women, defeminizing women, and feminizing men. That touches everything. I mean, it touches our culture, touches the roles, touches radical feminism. It even goes further. She had a priesthood. Her priests, listen to this, in her temples they were men who dressed up as women. As she possesses a culture, is that men will start dressing, we'll start seeing that in our culture, which we do. These are her ancient priesthood. Also, they were involved in same sexuality. We see that explosion as well. Also, it says, remember, she says she turns men into women, transitions them, and women into men. Many of her priests were actually surgically altered. And she especially, all the gods, but they go after the children. Because if you have the children, you have the future. What would possess an adult to do this to children? Well, what would possess it? The spirit. The goddess was in charge, she was a goddess of parades. She had parades happening all over. And when I looked at the ancient inscriptions of the parades, it describes them, and it says in the parades, the men would dress up as women in the parades, the women would dress as men. It would be a parade of gender bending, and that's exactly when you see this happening now, that's the sign of the goddess. And Sid, it's even like more mind-boggling, because I'm looking at this, and I look at the ancient observers, and they said, when did this thing happen? They said it happened, even St. Jerome, it happened in the month, they called it in Latin, Junium. June was the month of the goddess. She claimed a month, June, and she was the goddess of pride. So we have now a pride month. It's all come back. This is through these things, through these festivals, she possesses a culture.
In the past 4 or 5 months, I have watched as my body has fallen apart in front of me, my joints constantly hurting, my vocal cords aching, watching as parts of me atrophy away before my very eyes. How can you look me in the eyes and tell me that a child can consent to being changed to an experimental medical industry?
I began my transition in California. It was when I was a minor that I was first affirmed to adopt a false identity. But now, I am 26 years old, and I am dealing with genital atrophy, urinary issues, possible sterilization, tremors on half of my body, back pain, memory loss of my eyesight, and many more issues that I may develop as I age. My story is not an outlier or that of a failed transition, but the realization of the truth of this practice. If you look online, you will see many stories like mine. Looking back, I wish there was proper safeguards to protect me.
For many of us, transition was not the life-saving treatment we were sold. Some of us are standing on the other side and looking back thinking, what the heck did I do to myself, and why did people just go along with it? Some of us are struggling with infertility, some with body image. If you were me and you knew there was a way to prevent something traumatic that happened to you from happening to someone else, wouldn't you advocate for that?
Trans women and trans community saying that estrogen is just for looks. But there's so much more to it, it definitely changes the way you feel, the way you sing. In terms of hormones, there is no studies comparing it to placebo to even, get an idea, is it any better than placebo? Usually when you do drug studies, you do compare it to a placebo. But within a year after taking estrogen, I started hating my penis. I got convinced that it was just like, it needs to go, it doesn't belong on my body. I was getting very dysphoric. So I literally went from being okay with my to hating it and wanting it off my body.
I'm still experiencing a wide range of complications to this day from the hormones and blockers. I've been experiencing some joint pains, mainly in my arms, my legs, and my back. I still have issues with my urinary tract. I have to use the restroom pretty frequently, and I didn't even know that this was possible. This is like a pretty huge quality of life issue. I do hate to speak about it, but I'm experiencing dysfunction at the age of 18. That's something that women usually go through when they're in their 40s to 50s.